What's up everyone? In today's video I'm gonna be covering the 10 Metroidvanias that I'm most excited for going into 2026. This could be one of the best years for fans of this genre as we're getting a ton of different games, from hardcore platformers to survival horror hybrids that are pushing the boundaries of what a Metroidvania is. We have a lot to cover, so let's jump right in. Starting things off, we have a game that everyone that's a fan of this genre is probably familiar with, Crowsworn from Mongoose Rodeo. This is one of the most anticipated Metroidvanias of the year. The game was originally on Kickstarter, needing only about $90,000 to be fully funded, but it blew right past that and got close to $1 million. After finding that level of funding success, the game's release was pushed back to what we now expect will be 2026, as the developers want to ensure that they release a high quality product. So we don't have a specific release date yet, but it's reminding me a lot of how Silksong was handled, where we didn't get an official release announcement until the day was right around the corner. The game's setting is inspired by Victorian Gothic horror taking place in the land of Ferandal, which was once a vibrant kingdom until a dark curse fell upon it. You'll be playing as this masked figure that looks like a plague doctor who wakes up with no memory of who he is or why he is there. The world is oppressive and grim, filled with people and monsters who've all fallen to this curse, which makes even the air feel heavy. Being a Metroidvania, the game will of course offer a giant interconnected world with non-linear progression and ability gating. However, it differentiates itself with an aesthetic that pulls from games like Bloodborne and a combat system found in games like Devil May Cry, both of which the developers have cited as direct inspiration. The combat is built around what they call the Trinity of Combat. First, there's the Scythe, your primary melee weapon that does wide sweeping attacks to manage hordes of enemies. Second, you have pistols, and those that have played Devil May Cry will be familiar with how these function. They're not only used for damage but also to extend combos, juggle enemies in the air, and interrupt enemy attack animations. Third, there's Corvian magic, which are powerful spells and abilities that do a ton of damage. The magic system runs on a resource called Malice, which you generate by hitting enemies with your scythe. There's also this high skill mechanic called Corvian Ultimate, which you can use if you manage to fill your Malice meter twice without taking damage, giving you the option to unleash a devastating super attack. Aside from the combat, you will of course have platforming. You will be getting all the standard traversal upgrades and more, such as wall running and double jump. The game is said to have over 120 unique enemies and more than 30 bosses, so there's plenty of variety to keep you engaged. This game might not be Bloodborne 2, but maybe it's the best next thing. This is one of my most anticipated releases this year, and it will be available on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and Switch, and it will also be released on the Xbox Game Pass Day 1, which is great for those that are subscribed to that service. Next up we have Mio Memories in Orbit, releasing January 20, 2026. That makes it the first major Metroidvania of the year, and it's coming to PlayStation, Xbox, PC, and the Switch too. The game takes place in the Vessel, this colossal drifting world ship that serves as a technological ark. It was once home to a thriving civilization, but now it's overgrown with vegetation and populated by machines that have gone rogue. You control Mio, an android who awakens to find the ship on the brink of oblivion. The narrative is set to explore themes of artificial memory, mechanical decay, and the stewardship of a dead world. The core design philosophy is all about flow, rhythm, and precision. Movement is the primary way that you will be engaging with this world. You've got a grappling hook for swinging across chasms and vertical traversal, there's air gliding to extend your jump distance and make aerial adjustments, and you can wall cling to stick to and traverse vertical surfaces. While the platforming seems to be the focus in this one, combat still plays an important role, as you will be facing over 30 distinct enemy types and 15 guardian bosses. Your arsenal includes orbs that will act as projectiles, and you can create decoy clones to distract enemies or strike from unexpected angles. Progression uses a scavenging economy. You'll be collecting components from defeated enemies to enhance Mio's capabilities through a modifier system. For example, you can modify the grappling hook to function as a deadly combat lasso or as a defensive evade move. There's also this interesting trade-off where you can sacrifice your defensive shield to boost your damage output, effectively turning you into a glass cannon. Mio also incorporates some Souls-like friction regarding currency. When you die, you drop your unsafe currency, but to mitigate this, there are machines scattered throughout the world that let you crystallize your currency, effectively turning them into banks. The map system is another interesting friction point, as it's not automatically updated or always accessible until later in the game. You have to spend currency as specific NPCs to reveal map sections or update your view. The developer's goal with this is to prevent you from over-relying on the UI and encourage you to actually learn the layout of the vessel organically. I'm very excited to jump into this one once it releases, as I'm a sucker for the type of aesthetic that they're going for. It has that painterly look that's really nice on the eyes, plus it's promising a solid gameplay experience. Moving on, we have Aeterna Lucis from Aeternum Game Studios, coming sometime in 2026. This is a sequel to Aeterna Noctis, which got a reputation for being brutally difficult. The first game had this love-hate relationship with the community. Some people absolutely adored the challenge, while others were completely alienated by the difficulty. Aeterna Lucis appears to be a direct response to that feedback, aiming to retain the hardcore audience while also opening the gates to players who were turned away by the first game. The story of the game this time shifts from the King of Darkness, who was the protagonist of the first game, to his eternal nemesis and counterpart, the Queen of Light. Following the events of Aeterna Noctis, the balance between light and dark has been shattered. The Queen awakens alone at the edge of the void and must challenge the supreme god Chaos to prevent the destruction of existence. You'll explore new areas interconnected in a large world map full of secrets, secondary quests, and evils to defeat. You will also get all the expected movement mechanics from a Metroidvania such as wall jumping, double jump, and dashing. However, some of these will have unique twists as you are now playing as the Queen of Light. The developers promise much more polished combat controls, brand new abilities, and exclusive weapons for the Queen of Light. They are emphasizing smooth combat that flows seamlessly with the platforming. The game will feature 2 game modes: Lucis mode, which is the intended experience maintaining the high difficulty found in the first game with intricate platforming puzzles, environmental hazards, and precision requirements. Aeterna mode redesigns the game into a more traditional exploration-focused Metroidvania. It removes the environmental hazards, swaps complex platforming for combat encounters, and relaxes the movement requirements. So there is an option for those players that may want to experience the game and the story without bashing their head against difficult platforming sections. This is one of the most ambitious sequels coming out this year. It's hoping to build on the fanbase that the original game attracted. There is a demo on Steam currently available, which I recommend you guys try out. I played through it, and while there were a couple of things that I hope that the developers improve before the full release, I still enjoyed the gameplay and the mechanics, so I will definitely be playing this one when it releases. Next we have Runefencer Illya from Nootbox Games. Now this game, I'm not sure how many people know about it, but after watching the trailer for it and seeing what the developers are promising made me very excited for it. This is a passion project made by just 2 people, but despite the tiny team, the content that is being promised rivals AAA games. The game is said to have 24 areas and over 150 unique enemies. The project got funding from Ottersloth, the indie initiative from the Among Us creators, which gave them the resources to polish everything. The developers call it a love letter to PS1 era action RPGs and Castlevania Symphony of the Night. I also got some Zelda vibes after watching the trailer. You play as Illya of Moonstone, a young runist who crash lands on the sunken kingdom of Ethos, a mythical island which was thought to be lost beneath the waves for thousands of years. Here Illya begins her search for her missing twin sister, which plays out against the backdrop of a ruined civilization filled with strange worlds and peculiar characters. The tone of the game is cute and dark at the same time. The character designs, including Illya and the friendly critters you can pet, are charming and expressive, but the world they inhabit is dangerous and oppressive. The game features a steal mechanic which serves as the core pillar for both combat and exploration. Illya can steal runes from enemies, effectively copying their abilities. With over 150 enemy types, this means you can turn almost any attack in the game against your foes. Progression through the 24 areas is gated by ancient sigils that grant environmental manipulation abilities. For example, the gravity sigil lets you manipulate your weight and orientation so you can walk on the ceilings or become heavy enough to smash through weakened floors. The time sigil lets you stop time temporarily, freezing enemies and hazards in place, and the space sigil gives you high mobility options like dashing and running across water surfaces. There's also a ton of side content. You've got a cooking system with over 120 recipes for buffs and stat management. There are minigames like rhythm-based fishing and drone racing with a lizard. You can even populate a shrine with rescued NPCs. An exact release date for this game hasn't been given yet, but it is scheduled for release in 2026. After watching the trailer that they released, combat and movement look smooth and responsive, and I also like the idea of being able to steal enemy abilities and use it against them, similar to how a blue mage operates in Final Fantasy. Next up we have Chronoscript, The Endless End from Deskworks, published by Shueisha Games, the manga house behind One Piece and Naruto. They announced this at the September 2025 PlayStation State of Play with a release window of 2026. This is one of the games on the list with a very unique premise. You play as an editor who gets pulled inside a cursed manuscript which the author has been writing for 1,000 years but refuses to finish the story. Your job is to fight through the narrative, battle discarded ideas that became enemies, and force the story to its end. The game world is the pages of the book, drawn in pen and ink style, but those pages also exist in a 3D space within the writer's manner. You're going to be moving across 2D pages that stitch together to form the world, but then the camera will pull back and show you the entire 3D space. This lets them do puzzles where the pages get folded or moved in 3D space to create new paths in 2D, which seems very cool. Combat uses ink as a weapon and as a traversal tool. You can dive into ink pools to dodge or move under obstacles, and the enemies that you will be facing are corrupted souls that were characters from previous drafts who caused disasters and got resurrected as obstacles. The title Chronoscript and all the references to this 1,000-year story imply that we will be changing the story that the writer has written. Based on what we've seen, it looks like you'll be able to rewrite destinies or manipulate the timeline of the story to progress. You might be able to alter the state of the world by literally changing the text of the manuscript, which is a cool concept. The whole game seems very unique. I really can't remember if there are any other Metroidvanias with this aesthetic or concept, but if there are, let me know in the comments so I can check them out. Regardless, I'm definitely excited to learn more about this one as they release more information. Continuing on, we have Bloodstained, the Scarlet Engagement, the next mainline entry in the Bloodstained series overseen by Koji Igarashi. He's one of the biggest names in the genre, basically creating the modern Metroidvania. This was announced in June 2025 and is being published by 505 Games. It's a prequel to 2019's Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, which was itself a spiritual successor to Castlevania Symphony of the Night. The Scarlet Engagement is set in 16th century England before the events of Ritual of the Night. It introduces two new protagonists, Leonardo, a young fighter from the church's Black Wolves clan, and Alex, a knight from the kingdom's White Stags. They're tasked with infiltrating the ethereal castle, this floating fortress controlled by a demon lord named Elias. The narrative promises to unravel the dark origins of the Bloodstained universe, likely explaining how the Shardbinders were created and detailing the initial demonic incursions that set up Miriam's story in the previous game. One of the most interesting things about the game is that there's a buddy system where you control both characters. You can switch instantly or use them together for puzzles and combat, so one character might set up an enemy for the other to finish, or you may be switching between them depending on enemy elemental weaknesses. Each character likely has unique traversal abilities too. In my mind, this will work something like Tekken Tag, which is one of the few fighting games that I have played. I'm not sure if both characters will be on screen all the time, or they will be tagging each other in while one disappears and the other one runs in. Either way, this seems pretty interesting as not many Metroidvanias have done this. The game will also be using something new called the Epiphany combat system, which means that rather than finding skill books or collecting shards, you'll discover new moves as you battle. So you basically might be using a sword repeatedly, and then all of a sudden mid-fight you will have an epiphany that unlocks a new sword technique. The map is claimed to be the largest in the Bloodstained series, and the game will also feature a day and night cycle with 4 distinct phases. You'll have dawn, day, dusk, and night, all affecting the world in real time, shifting not only the visuals but also the way you interact with the world. Certain paths, enemies, or puzzles are only accessible at specific times of day, which adds another layer of depth to the exploration. Crafting and cooking are also central parts of the game, as you can craft equipment that visibly changes the character's appearance and cook dishes for permanent stat upgrades. Moving on, we have Grime 2 from Cloverbyte, the sequel to 2021's cult hit. A demo of this game dropped in November 2025, so some of you may have already tried it, but the full release is coming sometime in 2026. Grime 2 doubles down on its unique horror-like aesthetic. You will be playing as a formless, an art mimic that absorbs creatures and takes their shape. The world is made up of painted nails, giant vases, teeth, and bone, all these organic and artificial materials blended together in a disturbing but beautiful way. The developers describe it as a lived-in world, and their narrative focuses on learning the makings of your enemies while exploring the distinct cultures and civilizations that inhabit this strange place. The big mechanical evolution in Grime 2 is the mold system. In the first game, absorbing enemies will grant you passive traits, but here it allows you to shape those absorbed enemies into molds. These molds are active summons that you can deploy for special attacks like firing projectiles or throwing enemies, but they also have utility purposes like revealing secrets or helping you traverse hazards. The combat and the movement in Grime 2 is slower and more methodical than other Metroidvanias, reminding me a lot of Dark Souls. You have your normal attacks, a parry mechanic that can be used for both melee and projectile attacks, as well as a dash that provides some iframes. The game also features various weapons like axes, daggers, and maces, each having a unique skill. For example, you can throw your axe and once it strikes an enemy, it will spin in place for a short duration before returning to you. The developers are also emphasizing environmental combat as you can knock enemies into hazards such as spikes, but they can also do the same to you, making positioning important. I never played the first Grime, but I have to say that I really enjoyed the demo for this one. When you first start off, you might be shocked by how slow you move and attack compared to other Metroidvanias, but as you start to unlock new abilities and become accustomed to the movement and parrying system, it becomes really fun. So much so that after playing the demo, this became one of my most anticipated Metroidvanias of the year. We're gonna follow that up with a game that has a completely different aesthetic, Mariachi Legends from Halberd Studios, which is releasing in the second quarter of 2026. This is an action-oriented Metroidvania with detective elements that take place in the heart of Mexico. The story follows Pablo Cruz, a detective trying to save his hometown of Santa Mascota. To do this, he ends up striking a Faustian bargain with Death herself, La Catrina. In exchange for the power to fight the crime syndicate known as the Mariachi Legends, who also have supernatural ties, he has to deliver to her the soul of the man that defied her power and became immortal. Mariachi Legends is being described as combat-oriented, so if you're someone who prioritizes action over complex platforming puzzles, this might be the game for you. The main mechanic revolves around Pablo's ability to transform into La Sombra, which translates to the shadow. You can switch between the detective's gadgets and La Sombra's mystical powers, which likely serves as the primary method for overcoming different enemy types and barriers. You will be using your detective skills to find abandoned corpses, interrogate suspects, and ultimately solve the mystery surrounding several deaths in town. The game will feature a parry system that you will have to master to successfully perform deadly finishers. You will also be able to equip a vast array of weapons and sub-weapons to personalize your fighting style. You'll have access to things like guns, swords, whips, and magic. As the story progresses, you'll be obtaining new abilities, making you more powerful. Mexican cuisine is also integrated into the progression. You will be collecting ingredients to cook dishes for buffs and power-ups. The game also features a dynamic day and night cycle where Santa Mascota changes between the different times of day. This affects enemy spawns, which NPCs are available to talk to, and which paths you can access. Getting near the end, we have Silver Pines from Wick, published by Team 17. This is a bold genre fusion that is pushing the boundary of what we consider to be a Metroidvania because it mixes Metroidvania exploration with survival horror resource management. The game is set in Silver Pines, a half-abandoned small town. You play as Red Walker, a private investigator looking for a missing musician named Eddie Velvet. The setting is inspired by Twin Peaks and Silent Hill, a small mundane town that beneath the surface hides something nightmarish. What makes Silver Pines unique in the Metroidvania space is the survival horror mechanics. Unlike most games in this genre where health and ammo are plentiful or at least renewable, Silver Pines enforces strict scarcity. Every single bullet matters and your inventory space is limited, so you will be constantly making tough choices about what to carry. Progression is also handled differently here. Instead of unlocking magical abilities like double jump or dash, you're gated by tools and weapons. You might need a crowbar to pry open a door or a specific key to access a new area. This keeps everything grounded in reality and reinforces that private investigator fantasy. The combat is described as grounded and visceral. Red Walker isn't a superhero, he's just a regular person fighting against hulking bosses and nightmarish creatures. The combat is slower and more deliberate, emphasizing positioning and shot placement over flashy combos and speed. Every encounter needs to be approached carefully because you can't afford to waste resources. The core tension is between wanting to explore, which is fundamental to Metroidvanias, and needing to conserve, which is essential to survival horror. This creates a completely different pacing than other games in the genre, and if they nail that balance, this could be something special. Finally, to wrap everything up, we have Lucid from the Matte Black Studio, which is being published by Apogee Entertainment. This one's targeting an early 2026 release, so it could be upon us really soon. The game is set in the crystal punk world of Aiden. After the Great Fall and the death of the Lucid giant Alo, the world has fallen into dissonance. You play as Owen, a young sentinel tasked with restoring harmony to the celestial fabric. The world features diverse biomes like the frigid Onyx Ridge and the glittering Crystal Caverns, all rendered in modern pixel art. The developers have coined the term Celestovania to describe the game's fusion of celestial precision platforming with Metroidvania exploration. The core mechanic of the game revolves around these things called crystal arts, which are abilities that enhance both your mobility and combat simultaneously. These abilities include things like a crystal blade, crystal spear, and a crystal axe. Each crystal art modifies mobility and enhances combat in different ways. For example, the crystal blade allows you to perform a horizontal dash when jumping that is crucial to the platforming and boss battles. The key here is that combat and platforming aren't separate modes, they're just a singular fluid state of play. You can swap between arts instantly mid-combo. You can be dashing with a crystal spear, then you can cancel it into a heavy slam with a crystal axe, and finish everything off with an aerial combo using the crystal blade, so it's all about maintaining momentum and never breaking flow. Progression involves collecting crystal shards to upgrade Owen's bracers, which unlocks talisman slots for further build customization through this anointing system. On top of all of that, the music of the game is being done by David Wise, the composer behind Donkey Kong Country, so you're sure to have a killer soundtrack. This is another game that has a demo available on Steam, so if it catches your attention, you should definitely try it out. After trying it out myself, this game really shines when it comes to the platforming. You will be flying through these platforming challenges with no pauses, with smooth and precise controls, making them feel incredibly satisfying to do. So there you guys have it, 10 of my most anticipated Metroidvanias coming in 2026, or at least I'm hoping they do. If you want to stay up to date on these games as well as others, please subscribe to the channel and turn on that notification bell so you don't miss out on any new announcements. Let me know in the comments which one of these games you're most excited for, or if you're looking forward to one that I didn't list here, drop the title in the comments below, as I would really love to hear about it. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.